Alrighty there. What I should do is put this on battery saver. There we go.
Oh, okay.
All right. Ready there. Just bear with me, guys. Put this on. Yeah, just bear with me, guys. There's going to be stuff in the background just before. Okay, we're live, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with my mom, Sister Sharon, and Brother Dennis and Sister Shoshana are with us. And let me just take that share screen off so you can see my face. All right, shalom, everyone. We're going to be doing our regular Sabbath day studies with 2 Samuel. We're now at chapters 6 to 8, so I will be starting us off as usual, and then we'll kind of try to see if we can get a new reader for for each of the rest chapters. So we'll try to split it up as evenly as we can here. So let's see here. So I'll start us off at 2 Samuel 6. I'm gonna put the shared screen on here so you guys can actually see the scriptures on my screen. Okay. You know what? Actually, let's just, for a change, I think I have the eSword app on here. Let me just see here if I do or not. I might have to download it again. Oh no, I do. I have it. Okay, so we're gonna go from the Brentons here. LXX, we're gonna be looking at 2 Samuel 6. Okay, verse 1. And Daud again gathered all the young men of Yashrael, about 70,000. Daud rose and went, he and all the people were with him. And some of the rulers of Yehuda on an expedition to a distant place to bring back there the Ark of Eluah, on which the name of Yahuwah of armies, who dwells above the cherubim upon it, is called. And I'll explain why after the reading, why it should say above the cherubim instead of between. That's a common mistranslation, both in the Hebrew and the Greek. But I'll explain that later. But I do want to write down this phrase, or this name here, Yahuwah of armies, and why it's important. We'll expound a little bit after the reading why it's important. But just bear with me for a second. I need to get my notebook here. Okay. Let's see. Ooh. All right, so that was 2 Samuel 6:2. And the LXX has their Yahuwah of armies, aka Yahuwah Sabaoth. All right, hold on a second. Let me just, I'm hearing a little bit of background noise just momentarily here. Just want to make sure. Okay. Just so. All right, here we go here. So verse 3, they put the ark of Yahuwah on a new wagon and took it out of the house of Aminadab, who lived on the hill, and Uzzah and his brothers, the sons of Aminadab, drove the wagon with the ark. And his brothers went before the ark, and Uzzah and the ark and Daud and the children of Yashrael were playing before Yahuwah on well-tuned instruments mightily and with songs. They were playing before Yahuwah on well-tuned instruments mightily with songs and harps, with lutes and drums and cymbals, and as far as the threshold and took hold of it, for the ox shook it out of place. And Yahuwah was very angry with Uzzah, and Eluah smote him there, and he died before the ark of Yahuwah, before Eluah. And Daud was dispirited because Yahuwah made a breach upon Uzzah. That place was called the breach of Uzzah until this day. Now, this is a very important difference you should probably make a note of. The Masoretic claims that David was mad at Yahuwah, but it actually says he in the LXX he was dispirited or afraid.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
So that's a difference. Let's see. Until this day, verse 9, Daud feared Yahuwah in that day, saying, how shall the ark of Yahuwah come into me? And Daud would not bring in the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah to himself into the city of Daud. And Daud turned it aside into the house of Abiathar the Gethite. And the ark of Yahuwah lodged in the house of Abiathar the Gethite 3 months, and Yahuwah baruched the house of Abiathar and all his possessions. And it was reported to the king, saying, Yahuwah has baruched the house of Abiathar and all that he has, because of the ark of Yahuwah. And Daud went and brought up the ark of Yahuwah. The ark of Yahuwah from the house of Abiathar to the city of Daud with gladness. And there were with him, bearing the ark, 7 bands, and for sacrifice a calf and lambs. And Daud sounded with the well-tuned instruments before Yahuwah. And Daud was clothed with fine long robe. And Daud and all the house of Yashrael brought up the ark of Yahuwah with shouting and with the sound of a trumpet. Verse 16, Daud and Michal. And it came to pass, as the ark arrived at the city of Daud, that Michal, daughter of Shaul, looked through the window, saw Daud dancing, and played before Yahuwah, and she despised him in her heart. And they bring the ark of Yahuwah and set it in its place in the midst of the tabernacle, which Daud picked of offering the whole burnt offerings and peace offerings, and baruch the people in the name of Yahuwah of armies. So again, we see that name that we're going to talk about. Okay. 6 verse 18 has Yahuwah of armies again. And he distributed to all the people, even to all the armies of Yashrael, from Dan to Beer, a cake of bread and a joint of meat, and a cake from the frying pan. And all the people departed, everyone to his home. Oh, by the way, this verse here, to fully understand what he's talking about with the offerings from the frying pan, I recommend reading Leviticus, what is it, Mom, chapter 1 or 2? Where it talks about the grain offerings, and you shall, you know the verse I'm talking about, right?
But I don't know the exact chapter or anything.
No, I know. I'm not asking you for the exact chapter.
Oh, I thought you were. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
All right. So, departed everyone to his home, and Daud returned to Barak his house, and Michal, daughter of Shaul, came out to meet Daud and saluted him and said, how was the king of Yashrael esteemed today? How was today uncovered in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the dancers wantonly uncovers himself? So now she's making like a false accusation. Michal is trying to say that Daud was dancing sexually or uncovering himself before the women. And Daud said to Michal, I will dance before Yahuwah. Baruch be Yahuwah, who chose me before your father and before all his house, to make me head over his people, even over Yashrael. Therefore, I will play and dance before Yahuwah. I will again uncover myself thus. I will be vile in your eyes, and with the maidservants by whom you said that I was not had in honor. Milcah, the daughter of Shaul, had no child till the day of her death. So that's a good example of what happens when, someone is being rebellious against, someone Yahuwah chose to be king. So you could say that's almost, it's not exactly tyranny. Not tyranny. The word I'm looking for is treason. It's not exactly treason, but she is rebelling against the king who she's married to. So she's not just rebelling against her husband.
That's right.
She's rebelling against a king. Now, in ancient times, they call that treason. Okay, so that's like borderline treason there. So there could be multiple sins actually there by her that would have caused Yahuwah to not allow her to have children. So yeah. Now going back to the verses here where it talks about Yahuwah of armies multiple times in this chapter, just to explain, when you see Yahuwah Sabaoth or Yahuwah of armies, it is a specific compound name that you will see Yahuwah having in Scripture. So you will see sometimes when it's talking about Yahusha pre-incarnate, you'll see him identified as Yahuwah of armies. And to explain what pre-incarnate means, the Christianity calls it the doctrine of incarnation, is that the Word became flesh, so literally the Creator became incarnated in flesh, like the Word became flesh. That's the doctrine of incarnation. Not to confuse that with reincarnation, which is a heretical doctrine, but the doctrine that they call incarnation is just a fancy Christian word for the Word becoming flesh, the Creator himself becoming a human. So before Yahusha did that, he was called by many different names. He was called by the arm, the right hand, wisdom, the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud by day, fire by night, the esteem, the splendor of Yahuwah. When you see that a lot, where it says the esteem of Yahuwah filled the temple. Many different names Yahusha was known by. One of these is Yahuwah Sabaoth. If you see that, that's Yahusha. That's Yahuwah of heaven's armies is a lot of the modern Bibles. That's how they'll translate the word Sabaoth as heaven's armies, meaning he is the master of all the armies. All the armies follow him. Revelations chapter 19, verse 13. So anyway, just wanted to explain that. Verse 8, we already talked about the difference there, but just to reiterate, for those that are just coming across the study, we see here that the LXX has dispirited. The Masoretic text he was angry. He became angry at Yahuwah. And we're just going to double check here just to make sure that that's the case, that it's not a translator issue. I don't think it's a translator issue, but it could be for the Masoretic that a translator just mistranslated the word. So let me see. Let me go to King James with the Strongs here. Okay, so we go here to had made a breach, and it was sorry. Yeah. See, kara. The Hebrew word kara, furious, burn, kindled. So this would have you believe that Daud is angry at Yahuwah, which makes no sense. Because the very next verse says he was afraid. So what, you're going to be mad at someone but then afraid of them? The Masoretic makes zero sense in verse 8 at all. Versus the Septuagint saying David was dispirited because Yahuwah made a breach upon Uzzah, and that place was called the breach of Uzzah until this day. And David feared Yahuwah in that day. Way more
Very
sense.
different. Very
It actually, the Masoretic, by changing the word from dispirited to angry, it literally causes a contradiction between 8 and 9. You almost have, they're almost making David out to be double-minded. Makes zero sense. And obviously verse 19 is the verse that I was talking about that parallels with the Levitical priesthood there. So to understand what it means by cakes from a frying pan, why they're being offered as sacrifices, you have to go to Leviticus 1. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here. Actually might be Leviticus 2, actually. Yeah, so okay. Let me try to see here. Okay, so it says, if a soul bring a gift or sacrifice, this is Leviticus 2, verse 1. His gift shall be fine flour. He shall pour oil upon it. He shall put frankincense in it, is his sacrifice. He shall bring it to the priests, the sons of Aaron, having taken from a handful of fine flour with oil and all its frankincense. And no, the priest shall put priest shall put shall be for Aaron and his sons a most set apart portion from the sacrifices of Yahuwah. And if he brings it as a gift, a sacrifice baked from the oven, a gift to Yahuwah, fine flour, he shall bring the unleavened bread kneaded with oil, unleavened cakes anointed with oil. And if your gift be a sacrifice from the pan, it is fine flour mingled with oil. So this is the verse I was talking about. This talks about you can also bring a grain offering from the frying pan. So just I wanted to kind of give a context of that, why it says that in 2 Samuel 6:19. If your gift be a sacrifice from the pan or frying pan, it is fine flour mingled with oil, unleavened offerings. You shall bake them in fragments and pour oil upon them. It is a sacrifice to Yahuwah. And if your gift be a sacrifice from the earth, now the hearth, if I'm not mistaken, Mom, that would be like the old school ovens, right? The hearth.
Yeah.
So that would be like what back then they had ovens in the ground. They actually made them like in the ground or in their tent, and they would shove it right in the oven there. So that's what a hearth is, and that's what mine says. Mine is like the old English. It says the hearth.
Yeah.
If it's from the hearth, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. So there's multiple ways that Yahuwah in Leviticus 2 pan, or you can put it in an oven. So that was 5 to 7. So just to give some context. Stupid Alibaba, get out of here. All right. Other than that, I think it was self-explanatory, right? I didn't see much to really expound upon. Right?
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add or no?
Not to this chapter, no.
Okay. Let me see the Bishop Ray. Okay, here. So, Mom, do you want to read the next chapter?
Certainly, yeah. Okay. After the king was settled in his palace, and Yahuwah had given him rest from all his enemies around him, he said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am, living in a palace of cedar, while the ark of Yahuwah remains in a tent." Nathan replied to the king, "Whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for Yahuwah is with you." That night, the word of Yahuwah came to Nathan, saying, "Go and tell my servant David, This is what Yahuwah says. Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in? I have not dwelt in a house from the day I was brought to Yashrael up out of Egypt to this day. I have been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. Whenever I have moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any one of their rulers, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, why have you not built me a house of cedar? Now then, tell my servant David, this is what Yahuwah Almighty says. I took you from the pasture and from following the flock to be ruler over my people, Yashrael. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have cut off your enemies from before you. Now I will make your name great, like the nations of the greatest men of the earth, and I will provide a place for my people, Yashrael, and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning and have done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people, Yashrael. I will also give you rest from all your enemies. Yahuwah declares to you that Yahuwah himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you. You will come, who will come from your very own body, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with the rod of men, with floggings inflicted by men, but my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. Nathan reported to David all the words of this entire revelation. Okay. Then King David went in and sat before Yahuwah, and he said this prayer. Who am I, O sovereign Yahuwah, and what is my family that you have brought me this far? And as if this were not enough in your sight, O sovereign Yahuwah, you have also spoken about the future of the house of your servant. Is this your usual way of dealing with man, O sovereign Yahuwah? What more can David say to you? For you know your servant, O sovereign Yahuwah, for the sake of your word and according to your will, you have done this great thing and made it known to your servant. How great you are, O sovereign Yahuwah! There is no one like you, and there is no Elohim but you, as we have heard with our own ears. And who is like your people, Yashrael, the one nation on earth that Elohim went out to, sorry, my lighting is bad, redeem as a people for himself, and to make a name for himself, and to perform great and awesome wonders by delivering our nations and their mighty ones from before your people, whom you redeemed from Egypt. You have established your people, Yashrael, as your very own forever, and you, O Yahuwah, have become their Almighty. And now, Yahuwah Almighty, keep forever the promise you have made concerning your servant and his house. Do as you promised, so that your name will be great forever. Then men will say, Yahuwah Almighty is Elohim over Yashrael, and the house of your servant David will be established before you. O Yahuwah Almighty, Elohim of Yashrael, you have revealed this to your servant, saying, I will build a house for you. So your servant has found courage to offer you this prayer. O sovereign Yahuwah, you are Elohim. Your words are trustworthy, and you have given this good promise to your servant. Now be pleased to bless the house of your servant so that it may continue forever in your sight for you. O sovereign Yahuwah, have spoken, and with your baraka, the house of your servant will be baraked forever. I have one interesting point that I noticed, and I hope that this is a real connection. I recently read the prophet Haggai, and I just want to make a connection here between David's desire to build him a house and what was said to the people through Haggai. David had such a yearning to build him a house. He wanted to build him a house, and it was bothering him to his core. And of course, Yahuwah explained to him why he was not to build that house. But I want to just connect that with Haggai. And let me just find it. I had a marker and everything here. This is what was said from the word of Yahuwah through unto Haggai. Then the word of Yahuwah came through the prophet Haggai. His house remains a ruin. And what I basically got from that is, Yahuwah was saying, it's fine and well for you to have your houses made of cedar while I go on without a house. I think that that's what I'm reading into that. And so I'm seeing a difference of David's yearning to want to build the house. And at this time period through the prophet Haggai, it was like Yahuwah was having to say to them, you should be building my house, if I'm reading this right. How did that go on? Cheapers. Okay. Let me just reread this a second. Time has not yet come for Yahuwah's house to be built. Then the word of Yahuwah came through the prophet Haggai. Is it a time for you yourselves to be living in your paneled houses while this house remains a ruin? I don't know what you guys think about that. I'm just seeing the difference between David having such a desire to build his house, and yet, the word of Yahuwah is saying, my father does not have a house, and you have paneled houses. I don't know what you guys think about that. Doug should be back in a second anyway. Maybe he can say if he sees a connection there.
Oh, I was muted.
What's that,
Yeah,
Dennis?
didn't want. I was muted. Didn't know it.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
he didn't want David to build his house because he was too violent a person.
Right. And he was spent his life having blood on his hands. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why he got Shlomo to do it.
Right.
And interestingly, too, some of the people that Shlomo hired, one of them was a friend that that relates to what we were talking
right.
about last night with the Masons.
Right.
Hiram. Interesting how things come together.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I said by any chance?
I heard part of what you said.
What I was saying, Doug, is that in Haggai, it was like the word of Yahuwah was saying, you all live in houses, paneled houses, and yet I'm living, in my house has not been built, or I'm trying to think of what exactly it said.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, you guys have your nice houses to be in, and here I am, and he was like urging them on with that. Whereas David, back how many years ago this was,
Well, thousands of years.
Yeah, and he wanted to build his house then.
Yeah.
It's something too you think about, that all the people there, they probably didn't even think about building a house for Yahweh because he was spirit.
That's right, brother.
I think more it had to do with their sin. If you look at the whole book of Haggai in context, they're basically at the divorce at that point.
Right. That's right.
So you have to understand the historical context of the book as a whole.
Right. Right.
Versus the time of David, where Israel was actually somewhat in Jeremiah. They're pretty much at the end of their covenant with Yahuwah at that point of the first covenant. So they're pretty much, they're, so it makes sense why there's such a difference in mindset with them at that point. And even when they did want to rebuild Yahuwah's temple, they kind of were just more romanticizing about it than anything else. Even with Nehemiah's generation and all of them, they were more sad because they knew that the temple they were rebuilding was never going to be as luxurious as Solomon's temple. And it was all about them. It was like completely missing the point. So, yeah.
Yeah, Doug, sounds like you're cutting out again.
Oh, I am? Okay, hold on a second. I guess.
Yeah, you cut out for about 5 seconds. We heard nothing.
Hold on. All right, let me get connected to this hotspot here because that's what's probably doing it. So, other than that, let's see here. I live in a house of cedar. That was a big thing back then. The cedar was used a lot for building houses and temples. They didn't really have much cement, houses back then. So a lot of it was cedar, or a lot of it. I mean, I'm pretty sure there were some brick houses, but you don't see much of them.
Right, because cedar was so available over there, I think, where they were.
And cedar would also keep out moths and everything else, too.
Yeah. This is something I would like to bring out, because a lot of times we've been taught a Jewish understanding of the word debar, and where every time it says the word of Yahuwah came to someone, they're just thinking about his command or his utterance. They're not thinking about the word as a person. I believe this is literally, and this is the universal pre-incarnate name for Yahusha, by the way. So every time in the prophets you see The word of Yahuwah physically came to Nathan. The word of Yahuwah came to Nathan. The word of Yahuwah came to Jeremiah. That's not just utterance. That's a being. That's Yahusha physically going to them and saying, listen, hey, I want you to do this for me. So, we've been taught a Judaism interpretation of that, because most of us, when we come into this walk, we just look at that as, well, his command came to him or his utterance came to him. No, it's a person coming to Nathan and telling him what to do. It's Yahusha, before he took on flesh, coming to Nathan and saying, hey, I want you to go to David and tell David this, tell David that. But that's just something to keep your eyes on when you see the word of Yahuwah came to this person and that person. And just for proof of what I'm saying, we can go to the New Testament here and show you the New Testament itself tells you this is his name. Okay, so Revelations 19. And mind you, remember too, Yahusha is his human ministry name. That was not his name before he took on flesh. So a lot of people get confused about that. But if you actually look in the context of what he's called in the Tanakh, he's never called by the actual name Yahusha until he takes on flesh. He's not, that is a human ministry name. That is a ministry name to bring forth that Yahuwah is the Savior. That's the point of that ministry name. But as far as his original name, I think Revelation gives us a clue what his eternal name is. Revelations 19:13 says, and he wore a garment soaked with blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahuwah. And the armies of heaven were joined to him on white horses and were wearing linen white and pure. And so we see that in the Aramaic here, it shows that all the armies are around him. Now, the Greek, it will say they follow him, which probably makes a little bit more sense, but same concept. He's Yahuwah Sabaoth. He has the armies following him. He is also, the word of Yahuwah is his actual name. He was given the name Yahusha as a prophetic, messianic, earthly ministry name. And so that's the confusion people go to. They'll be like, well, isn't his name Yahusha? Yeah, it's his human name. Yes, when he becomes a human, that's what his name is. That's not what his name was from the beginning. And I'll give you another example that proves this. Go to John 1:1. Mind you, this is a callback to the creation. This is a callback back to the us in Genesis 1:26. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with Yahuwah, and the Word was Yahuwah. Now, anyone that wants to say when it says word, it just means utterance, John 1:1 debunks that. The Word is a person. The word of Yahuwah is Yahusha. So literally, we could paraphrase this, and it would say, in the beginning was Yahusha, and Yahusha was with Yahuwah, and Yahusha was Yahuwah. It's literally what it's saying. So when you understand who the word is, you understand what John is trying to relate to us in multiple instances. But literally, you could paraphrase it, since Yahusha is the logos, Greek word there being translated as word. He is the logos. He is the word. That's what it's saying. It's saying that Yahusha was with Yahuwah from the beginning, never was a created being, and that he was one and the same with Yahuwah. So anyway, so I just want to explain that. So when you see everywhere in the Tanakh where it says the word of Yahuwah came to this person, came to that person, came to that person, came to that person, that's Yahusha. So for those out there, especially that think Yahusha is nowhere in the Tanakh, he's everywhere. We just have not been taught how to find him. But anyway, so I just wanted to point that out, just so people could have proof of that when people ask us, how do we know that That's his name. Just trying to see if there's anything else. We talked about the cedar wood being mentioned. Now, what's interesting here, Mom, how does your version of verse 10 read?
Verse 10, are we back in
2 Samuel.
Okay, right. Let's see here.
I just see something prophetic here. I want to see how yours reads.
Okay. Okay. Ahimelech inquired. No, I'm not in the right spot. I'm sorry. I'm flipping back to
first of all,
flipping back to Revelation there. Okay, give me a sec here. And I will provide a place for my people, Yashrael, and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning.
Yeah, it seems like they changed this prophecy. It says here, they will dwell by themselves, shall no more be distressed, and the son of lawlessness shall no more afflict them.
Wow.
As he has done from the beginning. So this is more of a end times type of thing in the Septuagint, where you have the son of lawlessness, the son of iniquity, the beast being referenced here. My assumption is that Samuel was being inspired by the Ruach to write this down, or whoever wrote 2 Samuel was being inspired to write a prophetic verse there down that talks about the man of lawlessness. And that since instead of it saying a wicked people, and it says the son of lawlessness, now it's specific. Now it's about one entity,
right,
that is distressing his people. And you'll see throughout the whole Tanakh, this is echoed in the book of Micah. This is echoed in so many. Nimrod's another one. He has many different names. He's got the son of iniquity, the Assyrian. Whenever you see the scripture that says, when the Assyrian comes into my land, that's talking about Baal, Nimrod. That's talking about, so it's important to actually look at these different versions of the Tanakh here. So I want to write down the difference here in 2 Samuel 7:10, because there's a huge difference there. This actually could be added to our series we've been doing about the manuscripts. So just here. Oh, this is a little too light ink. I'm not going to be able to see that. 2 Samuel 7:10. LXX has son of lawlessness. I want to see if the My Sword has any references here. I see a couple of cross references. Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like their cross references are based on the Masoretic. Yeah, so that's kind of whack. They're where you actually would, according to the Septuagint, get a real cross reference to this concept is in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and I'll just read that real quick. 2 Thessalonians 2, going down to I think verse 6 and on. And you know what controls that he may be revealed in his time. Notice how it says he may be revealed in his time. So this is not talking about the arm of Yahuwah being revealed. is talking about Satan's little right-hand man being revealed in his time. The mystery of evil has even now begun to work within, only if that which now controls will be taken from the midst. And even that evil one will be revealed, whom our master Yahushua will consume with the breath of his mouth, and will destroy him by the revelation of his coming. For the coming of that one is in the activity of Satan in all power, signs, and false wonders. This is why we should not idolize gifts of the Spirit. This is why we shouldn't, oh my goodness, well, he does all these miracles, so he must be sent from Yahuwah. We should be very careful about doing that. And in all the error of evil which is perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth, in which they would have been saved or have life. Because of this, Alua sent them the activity of delusion, that they would believe lies. And all those who would believe not the truth, but chose evil, will be judged. And I say this word shouldn't be judged, it should be condemned. There's times where these English translators, they don't like the word condemnation, so they start putting the word judge everywhere. But we are indebted to thank Alua always for your persons, brothers, beloved of our Yahuwah, that Alua has chosen you from the beginning of life by set apartness of the Spirit, by belief of the truth. So then it goes on to talk about the election and all that. Okay, but let me see. What's the verse I was actually looking for? Here we go. My bad, guys. Verse 3. It gives him the exact same title that we see in 2 Samuel 7. In 2 Thessalonians 2:3, it says, let no man deceive you by any means, meaning that, guys, the second coming hasn't happened, to the effect that surely no revolt will first come, and the man of sin, the son of destruction, be revealed. So he's known, the beast is known as the man of sin, aka the man of lawlessness, and the son of destruction. So it's a very similar term, son of lawlessness, man of lawlessness, same thing. So 2 Samuel 7:10 is actually foreshadowing what Paul was given in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. And then let's see here, it has some cross references here. You also can find these concepts. We're not going to go there, but you can find these concepts in Matthew 24:23. So obviously we don't have the time to go through every single verse that talks about the beast, but you get the point.
Yeah.
He's called the man of lawlessness, son of lawlessness. Okay.
Abomination.
Yeah, well, he makes the abomination desolation. The abomination desolation is actually him sitting on a throne with a graven image in the temple. That's the abomination desolation. So a lot of people get confused. They think he's the abomination. No, he is not the abomination of desolation. He causes the abomination desolation. Okay. So I just want to clarify that for people. And I'll just show you guys what I'm talking about. Daniel 9:27. It makes it very clear that the abomination desolation is actually an event, not a person. This is where people get confused. Okay, so if you look at it, it says here, in 1 week shall establish the covenant with many. In the midst of the week, sacrifice and drink offerings shall be taken away. On the temple shall be the abomination of desolations in the end of the time. So it's an event. It's like he causes that. And at the end of time, an end shall be put to the desolation. So to understand what the abomination of desolation is, you have to understand in the Hebrews mindset, okay, you got a graven image in the temple and him sitting on the throne declaring to be Yahuwah. That is the abomination of desolation. And that's essentially what people have, I guess, claimed happened in 70 AD with, who was it? Who was it? Nero, or which one was?
I think it was Nero.
So Nero is claimed by some historians that he did some type of version of that in 70 AD when the temple was being destroyed. So what we have to understand about the abomination desolation, it's not a person. It's something that is done by the person. It is desecrating the temple is part of the abomination and desolation. Desecrating Yahuwah's altar, for example, Antiochus, not Antiochus. Antiochus Epiphanes, right? What did he do? He put a pig, sacrificed a pig on Yahuwah's altar, and then set up a graven image in the temple. That is the abomination of desolation. They even called it that in the books of Maccabees. So what we need to understand is the abomination of desolation is separate from the beast. The beast causes the abomination of desolation. So it's important to understand the distinction there. You can also find this in Daniel 11. I think it's 11:36 to 40. There's many places that it expounds on what the abomination of desolation is supposed to be. So anyway, so the reason we went down this rabbit hole was because of 2 Samuel 7:10 in the LXX says that no longer will the son of lawlessness afflict my people. So just wanted to explain that. Okay. I think we're up to chapter 8 now, right? I don't think there's anything else that I'm just going to check real quick because I was really not around for the reading. So I just want to see if there's anything else. Camp of Syria. So they went to the Syrians. All right, let me just see if there's anything else. Just it's talking about them making war with the Syrians. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is, oh wow, I'm reading the wrong thing here. Why am I at 2 Kings? What the heck? I'm like, whoa, sorry guys, that's my fault. Okay. Anyway, now I'd say this is important here. Verse 23 of 2 Samuel 7 here, we have the concept of Yahuwah redeeming a people for himself. And this is a big deal too. And this kind of goes into indirectly going into the oneness topic because you have it saying that Yahuwah, the Father, redeemed Israel for himself to make you a name, to do mightily nobly, so that you should cast out nations in their tabernacles from the presence of your people, whom you did redeem for yourself out of Egypt. So twice it says Yahuwah redeemed Israel for himself, not anyone else. And if we take that context, right, and go to the book of Ephesians, I'm going to show you something really cool here. go to the book of Ephesians, right? A people for himself. A people for himself. I think it would actually be a spotless bride would be the phrasing I'm thinking. To himself. Ephesians 5:27. Just going to show you guys the connection here, right? So let's keep the context that it says that Yahuwah redeemed Israel in the Tanakh for himself, not for anyone else, right? So let's keep that context and go to Ephesians 5:27. That he might present to who? And who is the he being talked about? Let's go to verse 25 here. Husbands, love your wives, even as the Messiah, Yahusha, also loved the assembly and gave himself for it, that he might set apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present to himself his esteemed assembly, not having a spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be set apart without blemish. So 2 Samuel 7:23, it says Yahuwah redeemed them for himself. Now we have Ephesians 5:27 saying that Yahusha redeemed Israel for himself. For there not to be a contradiction, there's really only one conclusion we can come to when we combine the two accounts here. Either it's talking about the same person interchangeably, just in different roles, like one referring to the Father, one referring to the Son, but it's the same entity, the same mighty one. Or you would have a contradiction between the two accounts, because now you have one people being redeemed by a different mighty one in the new covenant. There's really only two options you have, really, because it's saying for himself both times. So, and by the way, according to Torah, you can't have a different husband die for the same bride. So, for example, according to was it Jeremiah 3, Mom, where the divorce happens, right? And Yahuwah says she's going to be polluted. She would be polluted coming back to him. Okay, the only way around what Jeremiah 3 says is you go to Romans 7, and we'll just go to Romans 7 real quick to try to pull this connection for you guys so you guys can see what I'm talking about. This is where the oneness thing is important. Okay. Know you not, brothers, that I speak to them that know the Torah. He's not talking to Gentiles here. How that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. Now, by the way, FYI, he is not talking about the Torah in general. He's talking about the law of marriage. I'll show you why. Verse 2, for the woman which has a husband is bound by the law to her husband, so as long as he lives. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. So this is the point I'm trying to make here. If a separate person from the father died for her while she is still in debt to the law to the first husband, that doesn't nullify the first covenant. The only way that Israel could have been redeemed is the original husband has to die for her. The only way, according to the New Testament, you have that is that the guy that dies for her in the New Testament is the original husband. But I know there will be those out there who say, well, Doug, it says Yahuwah is the first husband. And I would agree with you. He is. But that doesn't mean Yahusha isn't.
And that's right.
This is where the oneness thing is important.
Yeah, it is.
This is the core of the Besorah message. This is where it becomes important now, because now you have the original husband dying so that his wife is free from the first covenant, so he can be the new husband, Yahusha HaMashiach, to marry her. It's the same person.
Right.
but he does become the new husband. Now, if you have a different man that never married her in the first place dying for her, guess what? According to Torah, that can't happen. Can't happen. So when you really look at the marriage paradigm and what the Torah says about marriage and what Paul in Romans 7 says about how the father can take her back, the only choice you have is that Yahusha is Yahuwah in human form. That is the only option you have. Other than that, you would have to reject the New Testament, according to Romans 7. You would have to reject the New Covenant, because if he's separate, completely not the father at all, separate, different person, then you have Romans 7 being violated in the New Testament. So it is extremely important to understand the oneness in this specific topic. And so that's what I would encourage people to study about, is really look at these verses we just brought up. Ephesians 5:27, for himself. 2 Samuel 7:23, for himself, for yourself. Jeremiah 3, Romans 7, how all that connects. Okay, because all of that connects to one another. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if they're not the same person, then you have a different mighty one in Ephesians 5. I'm playing devil's advocate here, obviously. I'm speaking hypotheticals here. If we're wrong and they're two separate people that are not the same, you have a different mighty one being preached in Ephesians 5 than 2 Samuel. And so this is why droves of people, guys, are leaving the Brit Hadashah because of this topic. Because when they get confronted with this within their own studies by themselves, they're choosing the easy way out to throw away the New Testament. And it's very clear that Paul is talking about the same husband 2 Samuel is talking about. So we really only have one conclusion right after that. If that's the case, they're talking about the same person. There's only one conclusion you can come to. So again, I really recommend, for those that are still kind of confused about the oneness, really study into the marriage paradigm. And it will be very clear to you that this is the only option you have, according to what Torah says. This is the only option you have. So, all right. Other than that, I think, though, that is it. As far as 2 Samuel 7, I don't think we could expound it any further, really. Okay. Now, is he talking about Solomon in verse 14 there, Mom?
Yes.
I will be his father. Yeah. So we have
that's Solomon.
We have like a messianic foreshadowing, because we read what Hebrews 1 last night, where Paul is quoting from Psalms, where Yahuwah says the same thing to Daud: he shall be to me a son. It's prophetic foreshadowing is what that's called. And your house, okay. Did Nathan speak unto Daud? Oh yeah, I forgot about this. The Masoretic adds in Adonai here. And I forgot about this in verse 18 here. So when King Daud and sat before Yahuwah, he said, "Who am I, O sovereign?" is like a nice way of them trying to hide the fact that there's Adonai there. So when your translation says like sovereign Lord, that's like a way to hide it. See, right here we have Adonai, and then the all caps God is hiding Yahuwah there. So in the Hebrew text, it would actually be Adonai Yahuwah. Now, in the Septuagint, that extra lowercase Lord is not there, if I'm not mistaken. See? Or it would say, "Who am I, O my master?" O Yahuwah, what is your house that you love me for these things? And if I'm not mistaken, the lowercase Lord they have translated here, that's the Greek word despot, which just means generally a master. Okay. Yeah, see? Different word. So different word here. Oh, no. Okay, no, it actually, they use kurios twice. Now, this is where, though, you got to realize, though, kurios is a substitution, okay? Kurios, when it has, this is what, from my understanding, when the translator translates kurios as all lowercase into Lord, it's talking about just a master. Then when they translate it in the all caps Lord, that's where they're indicating that in the original text it would have had Yahuwah there. So either way, the Septuagint, there's no proof the Septuagint ever had Adonai in it. So that's kind of the point. You will only find the word Adonai in the Masoretic text. It's never used in other texts, from as far as I know. So I just wanted to show that. Okay, so that was verse 18. Mm-hmm. So we already talked about redeemed Israel for himself. Oh, here's another good one too, going back to that topic of Israel was always to be Yahuwah's bride. Here we are right here, right? It says, you have prepared for yourself your people, Israel, to be a people forever. And you, Yahuwah, are become their mighty one, their Eluah. So just added proof to what I was talking about before. And now, okay, concerning your servant, okay, let your name be magnified forever. That's another important one right there in verse 26. Okay. So again, it goes back to him talking about building a house for Yahuwah. Concerning your servant. Continue forever. You has spoken, the house of your servant shall be baruched with your baraka, so as to continue forever. Okay. Now, something I want to do, because I know if I keep these as one single recording, they're going to be too long. People are not going to be interested watching like a 2-hour video. What I'm going to do real quick, guys, is I'm going to end this first recording. And we'll be right back. All right. So stay tuned, everyone, for part 2 of this study. We are going to be doing our last chapter. Briefly, we might take a short intermission just in case any of us, needs to take a break or whatever. But stay tuned. We will be back shortly. Shalom. Shabbat shalom.